In 1863, in a village called Alwalton in Huntingdonshire, a boy is born into a family that is already falling apart. His father runs a flour mill leased from the church. The business is failing. Within 4 years, it collapses entirely, and the family breaks. The father takes his 2 boys to London, finds work in another mill, and then falls ill with a disease that will kill him before the boy turns 10. The boy's name is Frederick Henry Royce. He is 9 years old when his father dies in a poorhouse in Greenwich. He has no money. He has no family that can support him. He has had exactly 1 year of formal schooling in his entire life. He stands on railway platforms at Clapham Junction and Bishopsgate, selling newspapers for W.H. Smith, earning pennies a day. His meals, by his own account, are 2 thick slices of bread soaked in milk. He sleeps, on at least one occasion, in a dog kennel for warmth. That boy will go on to design the engineering lineage behind the single most important aero engine of the 20th century. The engine that powers the Spitfire. The engine that powers the Hurricane. The engine that holds the line over southern England in the summer of 1940, when the fate of Western Europe depends on a handful of pilots and the machines they fly. And then the company he founds. The most recognized engineering name in Britain, a name so embedded in the language that it becomes a synonym for the best of anything, will go bankrupt. Not slowly, not across decades of quiet decline. It collapses in a single day, over a fan blade it cannot make. This is the story of the newspaper boy who built the engine that won the Battle of Britain and then went bankrupt. Royce has nothing, but he has a quality that no school can teach and no poverty can take from him. He is obsessive about how things are built. A great aunt on his mother's side scrapes together £20 a year to fund an apprenticeship at the Great Northern Railway Works near Peterborough. He is 14. He boards with a local family, keeps selling newspapers on the side to cover his living costs, and spends every evening studying algebra and electrical engineering from library books by candlelight. When the money runs out 2 years later, he walks to Leeds looking for work. He cannot find any. He walks back to London. He finds a position at the Electric Light and Power Company as a tester, installing the new electric arc and incandescent street lighting that is replacing gas lamps across the capital. He attends evening classes at the City and Guilds College. He teaches himself everything the formal education system never gave him. In 1884, at the age of 21, Royce puts together £20 of his own savings and, with a friend named Ernest Claremont, who contributes 50, opens a small workshop in Cook Street, Hume, Manchester. They call it F.H. Royce and Company. They make dynamos. They make electric cranes. The work is precise, reliable, and built to a standard that most manufacturers in the area cannot match. Royce's obsession with quality, with the idea that everything he touches must be the best version of itself, starts to become a reputation. But by the turn of the century, cheap imports are undercutting the electrical business. Royce needs a new direction. He buys a second-hand French Decoville motor car. He drives it. He hates it. The car is noisy, unreliable, poorly engineered. And Royce, being Royce, decides the only rational response is to build a better one from scratch. He has a phrase he repeats throughout his life: take the best that exists and make it better. In early 1904, the first Royce 10-horsepower car rolls out of the Manchester workshop. It is quiet, it is smooth, it is reliable. At a time when most motor cars rattle themselves apart within months, word reaches a young aristocrat named Charles Stuart Rolls. Rolls is everything Royce is not. Eton-educated, Cambridge degree in mechanical science, son of a baron. He runs one of Britain's first motor car dealerships in London, selling imported French machines. But he has been searching for a quality British car to sell under his own name. He hears about this Manchester engineer building cars that do not break. On the 4th of May, 1904, Rolls and Royce meet at the Midland Hotel in Manchester. The newspaper boy and the Baron's son shake hands. Rolls reportedly tells associates he has met the greatest engineer in the world. The agreement is immediate. Royce builds the cars. Rolls sells every one of them. The cars carry both their names. Rolls-Royce Limited is formally incorporated on the 15th of March, 1906. That same year, they launched the car that will define the brand for the next century. the 4050 horsepower. The 12th chassis is finished in aluminium paint with silver-plated fittings, and someone gives it a name that sticks, the Silver Ghost. In 1907, the Silver Ghost completes a continuous monitored run of 14,371 miles under Royal Automobile Club observation, smashing the previous endurance record of roughly 7,000 miles. No car in the world has ever done anything close. The previous record holder lasted less than half the distance. Autocar magazine calls the Silver Ghost the best car in the world. Nearly 8,000 will be built over the next 2 decades, including cars assembled at a second factory in Springfield, Massachusetts. The name Rolls-Royce enters the English language as shorthand for the finest version of anything. When someone says something is the Rolls-Royce of its field, they mean this car, this company, this standard. Then, on the 12th of July, 1910, Charles Rolls is killed. He is 32 years old. His passion has shifted from cars to aviation. And, at an air show in Bournemouth, the tail of his Wright Flyer breaks apart in flight. He becomes the first Briton ever killed in a powered aircraft accident. The partnership that built the company lasts barely 6 years. Royce is devastated, but he keeps building. And then a war starts that changes everything about what Rolls-Royce makes. When the Great War breaks out in August 1914, the Rolls-Royce board initially votes against building aero engines. They make luxury motor cars. They do not make weapons. But the war does not care what they prefer. Demand for luxury cars evaporates overnight. The War Office comes calling. And Royce, now working from home due to worsening health, designs the Eagle, a water-cooled aero engine that first runs in February 1915 at 225 horsepower. By the end of the war, approximately half of all aero engine horsepower used by the Allies comes from Rolls-Royce. Think about that. A company that 4 years earlier refused to build engines for war now provides half the power keeping Allied aircraft in the sky. 2 Eagles carry Alcock and Brown across the Atlantic in June 1919. The first non-stop transatlantic flight. The newspaper boy from Al Walton has become one of the most important aero engineers on Earth. But Royce is not finished. His body is failing. He has had major surgery, been told he has months to live, and has not set foot inside the factory since 1912. He runs the engineering of a world-class company from a cottage at West Wittering in Sussex, too ill to travel to Derby. His engineers come to him instead, carrying drawings across the country for his personal approval. Every design passes through his hands. Every detail answers to his standard. The man cannot walk to his own factory, but nothing leaves it without his signature. In 1928, walking on the beach at West Wittering, he sketches the outline of a new racing engine in the sand with a stick. That sketch becomes the R engine, which wins the Schneider Trophy at speeds exceeding 340 miles per hour. And from the R engine comes the design lineage that leads to the most important piston engine ever built, the Merlin. Royce dies on the 22nd of April, 1933. He is 70 years old. 6 months later, the engine he set in motion runs for the first time on a test stand at Derby. Rolls-Royce names it after a bird of prey, the Merlin Falcon. What the Merlin replaces is not just an older engine. It replaces the ceiling on what a fighter aircraft can do. Early versions produced just over 1,000 horsepower from a compact enough package that a single-seat fighter can outclimb, outrun, and outfight anything else in the sky. By the end of the war, with the supercharger work of a brilliant engineer named Stanley Hooker, late variants will exceed 2,000. Think about the arc of that for a moment. A man who started with nothing, who taught himself engineering from library books, who had 1 year of schooling, designs the lineage behind an engine that will power the Spitfire, the Hurricane, the Lancaster, the Mosquito, and, when the Packard Motor Car Company builds it under license in Detroit under a $130 million contract, the P-51 Mustang. The Packard Merlin transforms the Mustang from a mediocre, low-altitude fighter into the war-winning long-range escort that protects American bombers all the way to Berlin and back. In the summer of 1940, the Battle of Britain begins. The Luftwaffe sends wave after wave of bombers and fighters across the English Channel. What meets them is a small force of pilots flying Spitfires and Hurricanes, and at the heart of every one of those aircraft is a Rolls-Royce Merlin. Air Chief Marshal Arthur Tedder later identifies 3 factors in Britain's aerial victory: the skill and bravery of the pilots, the availability of high-octane fuel, and the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine. 168,176 Merlins are built before production ends. Rolls-Royce Rolls-Royce produces 82,000 across 3 British factories. Packard builds 55,000 in Detroit. Ford of Manchester builds another 30,000. Without the Merlin, the RAF does not hold the line. Without the RAF holding the line, the war ends differently. The engine that began as a sketch in the sand on a Sussex beach is one of the reasons Western Europe remains free. After the war, Rolls-Royce pivots to jet engines with the same intensity it brought to pistons. The story of how they enter the jet age is, characteristically, unconventional. Frank Whittle's jet engine work has been languishing under the Rover Company, which cannot get the design to run reliably. In late 1942, Rolls-Royce's Ernest Hives and Stanley Hooker meet Rover's Spencer Wilkes at a pub called the Swan and Royal in Clitheroe, Lancashire. Over drinks, they make one of the most consequential deals in British industrial history. Rolls-Royce trades its tank engine factory at Nottingham for Rover's jet engine works at Barnoldswick. No lawyers, no contracts, a handshake in a pub. Within a month of taking over, Rolls-Royce logs 10 times more engine running hours than Rover managed in the entire previous month. The difference is not luck. It is engineering culture. The Welland becomes Britain's first production jet engine, powering the Gloucester Meteor into combat in 1944. Rolls-Royce names its jets after rivers, reflecting the continuous flow of air through the engine. Over the next 15 years, the company builds engine after engine, each one more powerful than the last. Over 11,000 Avons alone. The Conway becomes the world's first production bypass engine to enter airline service. Every major British military and civilian aircraft of the era flies on Rolls-Royce power. By the late 1950s, the company sits alongside General Electric and Pratt & Whitney as one of only 3 organizations on Earth capable of building engines for large aircraft. The workshop in Manchester has become one of the 3 pillars of global aviation. And then the company makes a bet that nearly destroys everything Henry Royce built. In 1968, Rolls-Royce wins the contract to supply engines for the Lockheed L-1011 TriStar, a new American wide-body airliner. The engine is called the RB211. It is the most ambitious jet engine ever attempted, a 3-shaft turbofan of unprecedented size and efficiency. To save weight, the engineering team designs the fan from a new carbon fiber composite called high-fill. Nobody has ever built composite blades at this scale before. The contract is fixed price, 150 engine sets, guaranteed delivery by 1971. The price per engine is locked. There is one problem. The carbon fiber blades do not work. In May 1970, during bird strike testing, engineers fire a chicken carcass into the spinning fan at full speed. The high-fill blades shatter. They delaminate. They fracture under impact in exactly the way carbon fiber was not supposed to. Rolls-Royce is forced to abandon the composite design entirely and redesign the fan blades in titanium, which is heavier, more expensive, and comes with its own metallurgical problems. Only one side of each titanium billet is the right quality for blade fabrication. The engine is already overweight. It is already down on thrust and burning too much fuel. The chief engineer behind the program, Adrian Lombard, has died in 1967, leaving what Stanley Hooker later describes as a vacuum nobody could fill. Development costs balloon to £170 million, nearly double the original estimate. The production cost of each engine begins to exceed the price the company is contractually locked into charging. The fixed price contract becomes a trap. Every engine Rolls-Royce delivers will lose money, and they are committed to delivering hundreds. On the 4th of February 1971, the board of Rolls-Royce concludes that RB211 liabilities will exceed the company's entire net tangible assets. They have no alternative. They ask the debenture trustees to appoint a receiver. Workers across the factory floor learn the news over the tannoy speakers. One shop steward tells the press they are fighting the Battle of Britain all over again. A Labour member of Parliament calls it a major national tragedy. That is not an exaggeration. A company whose name a widely cited marketing survey around the same period places as the second most recognized brand on Earth after Coca-Cola has run out of money. Not because it was poorly run for decades, not because demand for its engines dried up, because of a single contract for a single engine with a single unresolved material science problem. A carbon fiber blade that could not survive a bird. Yes, a fan blade. The government has a choice. Let Rolls-Royce die, and hand Britain's entire aero engine capability to the Americans. Or break every free market principle the Conservative Party has campaigned on and nationalize a private company overnight. Edward Heath's government, the same government that has been preaching against rescuing what it calls lame duck industries, does the one thing nobody expects. It nationalizes Rolls-Royce. A new state-owned company acquires the gas turbine assets from the receiver. The motor car division is split off into a separate business, Rolls-Royce Motors, which will pass through Vickers and eventually land in a contested sale where Volkswagen buys the factory, but BMW secures the name. That is a story for another day. Across the Atlantic, Lockheed warns the United States Congress that switching to a different engine supplier will delay the TriStar by 6 months and could bankrupt Lockheed itself. Congress authorizes $250 million in loan guarantees to keep Lockheed alive. One company's bankruptcy in Derby, England, nearly pulls an American aerospace giant down with it. The Aero Engine Company, the part that matters to national defense and to Britain's standing in the global aerospace industry, remains in government hands for 16 years. If you have watched our episode on Hilti, you know what engineering obsession looks like when it has capital behind it. Rolls-Royce, under nationalization, has engineering obsession, but limited capital. It competes against two American giants, General Electric and Pratt & Whitney, both backed by enormous defense contracts and domestic market access that a British state-owned company simply cannot match. Rolls-Royce's share of the civil aero engine market falls to as low as 7%, but the RB211 does not die. Freed from the fixed-price contract, redesigned with titanium blades, it enters service on the TriStar and works exactly as intended. Variants are developed for the Boeing 747, the 757, and the 767. The engine that bankrupted its maker becomes the foundation of everything Rolls-Royce builds next. In April 1987, the government sells its shares in a public offering that is 9 times oversubscribed. Rolls-Royce is privatized, with £1.8 billion in annual turnover, $120 million in profit, and an order book worth $3.1 billion. It is one of only 3 companies on Earth capable of building engines for large passenger aircraft. 16 years of state ownership have not broken the company. They have rebuilt it. Who joins as an apprentice in 1955 and rises to chairman by 1992, the recovery becomes something closer to a reinvention. Robbins inherits a workforce of 65,000. Within 7 years, he cuts it to 42,600. He is not popular for it, but he understands something the men who bankrupted the company did not. You do not win by building the most ambitious engine. You win by building the engine that stays on the wing longest and earns money every hour it turns. Rolls-Royce stopped selling engines the way it sold them before. Instead of selling parts and repairs, it sells guaranteed availability at a fixed rate per flying hour. The airline pays for uptime. Rolls-Royce earns more when the engine does not come off the wing. If you have watched our episode on steel, you know what survival through product obsession looks like. Rolls-Royce under Robbins is the same principle scaled to the size of a jet engine. The Trent engine family, the modern descendants of the RB211, now powers wide-body aircraft for airlines on every continent. If you have flown long-haul on a Dreamliner or an A350, there is a good chance a Trent was carrying you. Rolls-Royce's share of the installed wide-body engine fleet climbs from 32% to 36% in just 2 years. In January 2023, a new chief executive named Tufan Ergin-Bilgic takes over and tells 42,000 employees that the company is a burning platform. He is not wrong. He is also not gentle about the fix. In its 2024 full-year results, Rolls-Royce reports £17.8 billion in revenue and $2.46 billion in operating profit. The share price has risen over 500% since he walks through the door. The company now expects to hit its long-term profit targets 2 years ahead of schedule. Somewhere tonight, 35,000 feet above an ocean, a Trent engine is turning. It has been turning for hours. It will keep turning for hours more. The passengers do not think about it. They never do. But the engine beneath the wing traces a direct line back to a workshop in Cook Street in Manchester, to a sketch drawn in the sand on a Sussex beach, to a boy standing on a railway platform at Clapham Junction with a stack of newspapers under his arm and bread soaked in milk in his stomach. Henry Royce never saw his greatest engine run. He never saw it win a war. He never saw his company brought to its knees, or rescued by a government that swore it would never rescue anyone, or rebuilt into something larger than he could have imagined from that workshop in Hume. But the principle survived. It survived the death of a partner at 32. It survived 2 world wars. It survived a bankruptcy that shocked a nation. It survived nationalization and privatization and American competition and a carbon fiber blade that shattered when a chicken hit it. That is what happens when a company is built by a man who taught himself everything he knew from library books by candlelight, who slept in a dog kennel because he had nowhere else to go, who looked at every machine he ever touched and decided it was not good enough. Take the best that exists and make it better. That is not a slogan. That is Rolls-Royce. Not the car, the engine, the one that is still turning tonight, the one that is still turning tonight, the one that is still turning tonight.